Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of Random Warlock. I'll be going over talents and glyphs and just a few other useful things. Tell you about a few macros I like to use. So here we go. Let's get started with destruction talents. This is the setup I've been running with throughout the whole show so far. Been using this for a few months. The first tier is all sort of health regenerating. This is a 2-minute cooldown. Soul Leech is kind of passive. It's kind of like our old Soul Leech. It's strictly for PvE. And Harvest Life, I could see that being kind of fun, having some uses in very large battle settings. It turns Drain Life into an AoE basically. But Dark Regeneration really is the best, and I'll tell you more why later because I macro it with the Health Stone, as you will see. Tier 30 is probably the biggest choice out of all the tiers. It's all our extra CC. There was a time when Destruction would have had all 3 of these, but now they make us pick. I still like Shadow Fury the best. It's a AoE stun. Nice, quick. It's got the shortest cooldown. I like to use it for dealing with when there's just a bunch of people around you. You can stun them all and try to get away. At level 45 you've got Soul Link, Sacrificial Pact, and Dark Bargain. And Dark Bargain is the bubble, and I really like the bubble because it's preventing all damage for 8 seconds, and then for 8 seconds after that it deals 50% of the damage. So it can still kill you. It's not a get out of jail free card, but if you combine it with healing, or there's actually 2 cooldowns that can mitigate that damage. One is our old Twilight Ward that we've had for years, and the other one is also a new spell, Unending Resolve. It reduces our damage and prevents interrupts and silences. So Dark Bargain and Unending Resolve are kind of our two big survival defense cooldowns, and it pays to use them both wisely. Sacrificial Pact is kind of cool. I haven't really played around with it much, but some people like this instead of Dark Bargain. This one gives you a shield basically based on your demon's health. Your demon sacrifices some health and you get a shield. Like I said, I haven't really played around with it too much, so I don't know how much that shield lasts. I kind of like the nature of Dark Bargain is just kind of guaranteed 8 seconds, and then of course you have to deal with it. Good old Soul Link is it could, if people are doing Grimoire of Sacrifice, Soul Link will give you some extra health. So that's a potential spec. I think I remember messing around with that in the early days of Mists, but you do end up losing the pet, so in a way it's kind of like, who cares if you have more health if you don't have a pet. If you keep the pet and keep Soul Link, it's basically reduces everything passively, but I don't think that's as useful as having these kind of oh shit buttons. And I guess I didn't talk much about Mortal Coil or Hollow Terror, but because I said I preferred Shadow Fury. But yeah, Mortal Coil is our old Death Coil. Some people like this because it gives you health, and it's kind of like a guaranteed 3-second fear. And then Hollow Terror is the AoE fear. I remember having some fun with this in Alterac Valley, where I would run into a tower, fear everybody in there, and try to cap the flag quick. It actually worked a few times. Okay, so going back to this tier now. Unbound Will is my choice. It's basically a 1-minute cooldown trinket. So, if you have this and then plus your PvP trinket, as everyone should be running with, you essentially have 2 ways to get out of enemies' CC. It does come with a high price, 20% health. But it's, so you can't use it when you're very low. You have to make sure you can survive it. But it is really useful. And it has some other uses too, like if you're loaded up with dots or some crazy magic effects, you can use this to purge them all. Burning Rush is kind of cool. I wish I could use it, but the other stuff is too useful. It's just like an instant speed boost, and it costs a little bit of health. But the biggest danger here is forgetting that you have it on. And then Blood Horror I haven't messed around too much with. It's a new... It replaced the Blood Fear, which people thought was too OP, and I never really liked using it, but I guess it was probably really useful in Arena with organization and planning. But Blood Horror is kind of, you know, like, it's a charge that you put on yourself, and anytime someone hits you in melee, it'll sort of horror them. Almost like, you know, as if they're getting mortal coiled by touching you. So I could see that being pretty cool if you got used to casting it. I might have to mess around with that. This tier, the pet tier, Grimoire, you have a choice of 3. I'm rolling with Supremacy just so that I can play with these new pets, because Warlocks for so long had the same old pets. And they, you know, they do have some perks, such as the Succubus, or Shavara, has an upgraded seduction. It's called Mesmerize, and you can cast it on more than just humanoids. So I'm not sure if it's still the case, but I remember for a while ferals couldn't be seduced because they counted as, you know, shape-shifted beasts instead of humanoids, but this way I can get those pesky ferals seduced. Grimoire of Service is also I could see potential there. For a while I was rolling with this so that I could cast the felhunter as an interrupt. Basically, you know, every single pet that you summon additionally will do like one thing and then just kind of fight for a few minutes. So it's kind of like situational. The felhunter, when you cast it, it interrupts your target, so you can kind of almost use that as an interrupt. So you can have 2 pets. That's kind of cool. And then Sacrifice, you know, some people were saying, I think some Destro, maybe earlier in the expansion, ran with this because they had insane damage when you sacrifice your pet and everything. But the utility is just way too useful for me. And the final tier, this one I'm just in love with. Kil'jaeden's Cunning. You can cast and channel while moving. Has completely changed my game. Now I pretty much never have to stop moving. It took me a while to get used to, actually. You'd be amazed how you get used to casting it still. The only downside is you have to create a stop cast macro, or you can just bind stop cast to something. I think mine is on control space. Not because that's a particularly good keybind, but most of my other ones were full. That's important because you no longer can just kind of stop casting by just wiggling or moving. That's what I used to do. Take a step back. That doesn't work anymore. I know a lot of people use Manaroth's Fury, which increases your AoE, but I don't think I would find that as useful as being able to move constantly in a BG. And then Archimonde's Vengeance is just kind of like, it hurts, you know, the people that are attacking you kind of passively, or, you know, in a big burst at a time. This could be useful in smaller scale fights, or, you know, like a duel or something, or when somebody's like focusing you. Again, this is just far more useful, having this movement passive all the time, for me, at least. Alright, so Glyphs, I like the Glyph of Hellstone. You receive 100% more healing, but it's restored over 10 seconds, so it turns into a heal over time. So you kind of have to plan for it. You can't save yourself at the last second. But, you know, one thing I really often do is combine it with Dark Bargain. Absorb the damage, hit the Hellstone, you know, giving yourself a few seconds to get back. That seems to work out pretty good. Glyph of Conflagrate is a must-have. It no longer requires Immolate to be on the target. And I use Glyph of Demon Training mainly for lack of anything better. The main reason I like this is because it makes the Mesmerize, or seduction, it removes dots from the target, so that lets me CC people without worrying about, do they have a dot on them? Did I immolate them? Did I put, all this other junk on them? That is going to break it in a second and, make me waste the CC. So that's why I like that. I really don't see much else for destruction. Some people might like Glyph of Dark Soul. It reduces the cooldown's effectiveness but gives it to you passively. Some people might like Demonic Circle if they use that a lot. Drain life, I don't know. Ember Tap. Kind of Siphon Life even. I had this for a while. I never really noticed much healing from it. And then minor glyphs, Unending Breath increases your swim speed a little bit, so it's kind of nice to have. Glyph of Nightmares is really cool. Your Felsteed and Dreadsteed can run on water. And then I have Glyph of Kilrog, but I never really use that. There's really nothing else useful for destruction. Alright, so I'm going to talk very briefly about stats. You need to be at least 6% hit for PvP to be able to not miss anybody. And your stat priority really for, reforging and all that stuff is Mastery, followed by Crit, followed by Haste. And well, that's the the priority for the secondary stats. Obviously, Intellect is the first priority, and after Hit is first, then Intellect, and then the secondaries. I'm not going to go too much into the gemming and the enchants because there's plenty of places to find that info. But again, you just want to do Intellect, Mastery, any other bonuses that will increase your damage as much as possible. Alright, I'm going to talk about a few macros that I find useful. And, everyone should be keybinding, of course. And there's a lot of good keybind guidance out there. The secret to keybinding is not getting overwhelmed. Just start out small, get used to running around and casting a few of your main spells. Here I have like most of my main damaging rotation spells. Here I've got, cooldowns, other useful stuff, CC, debuffs, and then, stuff I can click and pet stuff over here. Everyone has their own system. There's no right way to do it, but you just kind of have to build yourself up and use Shift, Alt, key combinations like that. So I have a macro for cooldowns. It gives me, I've got Blood Fury here. This is because I'm an orc. That's a nice cooldown to have, a nice racial ability. Lifeblood is because I have Herbalism. Not particularly great perk, but whatever, it's what I have. I've got Herbalism and Alchemy. Totally not good PvP professions. It's just what I have from back in the day, and I'm too lazy to change them. Dark Soul. Every Warlock spec has a different Dark Soul cooldown, and you want to make sure you're using that pretty often. And then I've got my trinket down here. It's an on-use trinket. Whoops. It's an on-use trinket, so... And they all have pretty much cooldowns that match up. Maybe not all of them, but, it's enough to... I just have them all on one key instead of having to do them all initially. And it's also nice to stack them up, because then you get to enjoy all the bonuses all at once. This is another huge macro that I like. Regeneration and Healthstone. Dark Regeneration and Healthstone. So you cast your healing talent, which increases healing, and you cast your Healthstone, and you've got the Glyph, which increases the Healthstone. And, you're probably using your Dark Bargain and your Unending Resolve, so all that together makes you pretty much unkillable for, a good 8 to 15 seconds. So that's really, really nice. And all the times in the episodes when you've seen me surviving with tons of people on me, that's probably pretty much what I've been doing. So the only other really useful macros that I'm going to tell you guys about, and I'll actually probably, because there's a lot here, I might copy and paste this and put it in the comments. These are my pet macros. I basically have all the pet abilities bound to 2 macros. And I actually have them key bound to these 2 extra buttons I bought on my mouse. Highly recommend it. I know it's kind of annoying buying a mouse just for a game, but I'm telling you, those 2 extra buttons right by my thumb have really changed my game. And you know, be careful with getting more than that. I've tried those like 15 button mice and it's like way too many. Like I start to move it around and I feel like I'm going to accidentally press everything. I'm sure you could get used to it, but all you need is a couple, and I put my pet stuff on them. So, you know, for example, this one has Spell Lock, Whiplash, Singe Magic, Pursuit for the felguard. You know, this one's got Seduction, Devour Magic. Because pretty much every pet only has 2 abilities that you really need to ever use on demand. The rest is either autocast, or I think the Voidwalker has like 3. But how often are you using the Voidwalker really? So these 2 macros are pretty all-in-one. I really like them. The only downside is you have to have 2 different ones for Glyph of Supremacy, because all the pets have different names and all the spells have different names. So I will post those up. Hopefully you guys will be able to use them. And alright, I mean, I guess talked about the basics, sort of basic and intermediate PvP. I can show you a few more tips that I like to do and that are, you know, useful to master. One is running sideways. You don't really want to be backpedaling too much. I mean, you can do it sometimes, but when you're like, you know, trying to get away from a warrior or something, you run sideways, and that way you can keep them in front of you. It can be tricky sometimes, and you know, keep casting. And another thing you notice that I do all the time is hop, bunny hop, and this is mainly it because it gives you like a chance to move your finger and hit a keybind while you're in the air, and it won't stop you from moving. So for example, if I'm like moving sideways here and I want to move my index finger to hit something else, I can hop up in the air, touch it quickly, and then continue pressing the key by the time I land, so I can keep going without stopping. And you know, also like if you're running away from somebody and something procs like backlash, you can spin up in the air. Well, here, how can I actually get it to... Well, I'll do it with Fel Flame since it's an instant. So you're running away, you want to spin around and cast Fel Flame, and then you can spin back and, you know, land and keep running. Okay, well, yeah, anyway, you get the idea. So that's why I'm always hopping around, casting stuff. I do cast Immolate, I don't know, I do kind of like having that constant pressure on people. It's probably smarter to just cast Incinerate instead, because it does more damage, but I like to immolate people up, I don't know. Old-fashioned that way. I mean, I got used to the habit because it used to be needed to conflagrate people, but now they've got that glyph that lets us get away with it. And then, of course, there's the Havoc. You gotta make use of Havoc. Put Havoc on one mob, hit your cooldowns, load up a Chaos Bolt at another mob, boom, and just watch the huge numbers. Very important strategy to use in PvP. Alright, so I think that's probably about it. And I think it's time to queue up for a BG. See you guys in a bit.